Welcome in, everybody, to a brand new NFL tier maker positional rankings video. Today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite position groups in the NFL, edge rushers. Very much looking forward to this one here today. As we get started, if you could do me a huge favor, please do hit that like button so it tells YouTube and myself that you enjoy the video, that you want more tier makers, and to push this out to other NFL sickos just like you. Also, just a brief announcement. If you're watching this early enough, here on the Saturday after Thanksgiving at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, I'm going to be going live tonight to recap all of the exciting games that we just watched early this week through Thanksgiving and Black Friday, of course. A lot to digest there. And then I'm going to open up my Patreon mailbag questions and answer any super chats you guys have surrounding the NFL as well. So if you're able to catch that one live, excited to see you in the chat. Otherwise, you can watch it after the fact, or it will be up audio edition on the Fully Inflated Football podcast as well. But with that, let's go ahead and get started. Just a heads up, I did share this template out on the TierMaker website. Shout out TierMaker for their fantastic site there. That link is in the description below if you want to make your own lists. And then as far as our tiers are concerned here, the nice thing about edge rusher is I see it pretty clear cut. You got number ones, you got number twos, you got number threes, maybe some specialists mixed in there. And then at the top, you do have your true elite of the elites that do stand out above even your true number ones. So that's basically how it's laid out. And then I just have in between number ones, number twos, and number threes, I have the more murky territory of ideally a number two guy, ideally a number three guy, where, okay, maybe you're asking him to be your team's number one, but ideally you'd be able to find a better player and make that guy a two. So let's get started, and we get a fun one to begin with. Will Anderson Jr. These are just kind of sorted alphabetically by last name there, and he has something we've talked a lot about this year, really taken that step from, one of these players into that true elite defensive player of the year category of the top dogs at this position. The natural speed to power that he has, considering how great his get off is. He's not the tallest guy, but it works in his favor, so he just gets under your pads. That's really what's underrated about Will Anderson, is how he really does have the second or third best true bull rush in the NFL, even though he's not the biggest guy. But then he does have great athleticism and some bend and all the different traits you look for at this position. And what's scary about Will Anderson is he's just now really starting to put things together. Reminds me of a young Myles Garrett, where he was great to start, but once he really figured out like how to stem moves together and really pick apart tackles, that's when it was really ball game. I don't know that it'll quite be Myles Garrett, who we'll talk about later on. I consider right up there with your Lawrence Taylor and Aaron Donald for the best defensive players to ever do it. But similar in the sense of good development for the number one, or he wasn't. Will Anderson didn't go number one because there were QBs that year, but you get the point. All right. Then we've got Dorance Armstrong. He, to me, is clearly a true number two. He's one of the kind of prototypes of what I consider to be a true number two guy. He's a balanced player. He defends the run. He's turned into a very capable pass rusher. Now, it's telling that he has to be the number one for Washington. That's exactly how you know that they need to address that position group. He's not someone that's going to take over games, or something I'll probably say a lot in this video is get you a bucket when you need it, referring to like pass rush win rate and the ability to line up against a starting NFL tackle and get that game-changing pressure in a critical pass downs situation when you need it. I don't truly trust Dorance Armstrong to do that more often than not, but he's a persistent rusher that's developed a nice, well-rounded game. Then we got Derek Barnett. I debated even including him on this list. There's going to be a lot of guys relatively around Derek Barnett's caliber that actually didn't make this list just because they're not the most fascinating conversations. But I did include him because he flies under the radar a little bit behind Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter there. Obviously, he's a legit number three guy. He defends the run hard, and he can rush with a little power, and he's got some craft to get after the QB at times. So I wanted to include him there. He is a true number three, though. Then we got Nick Bonito. He has fully broken through this year after last year flashing big time at the end of the year, gets him that big contract, and he might be mad at his agent at this point for signing that deal as early as he did, because he left a little money on the table, I think, but can always re-up that money when he's got the production he's got this year. But yeah, he has, I feel like I always come back to my pro comp on him, and it's almost exhausted at this point for those that have been around the channel, but it really is so fun. I mean, with him coming out, my pro comp on him was a bolt of lightning. Didn't even go with the player comp on him, because he really does have unique get off and bend, and that's how he wins at the position. But you're starting to see him develop some inside counters as well. He's not so one-dimensional. If he ever develops a power element to his game, he's going to be an elite player. But he's definitely at the point at this stage that you can have Nick Bonitto as your number one, edge rusher in your group, as we've seen with Denver, that has one of the best pass rushes in the league. Okay, Austin Booker, quicker conversation here, but he definitely goes in the interesting prospect category. He beat Orlando Brown on a bull rush a few weeks ago that was insane. Someone that was a little bit more slight coming out of Kansas. Good to see that power profile in there for a guy that I do know has a lot of moves in his bag based on the college tape. But he is a guy you kind of have to go back to the college tape on, because he just hasn't, played too much for the Bears. But hopefully down the stretch here can get a little bit more runway, and I think he has a chance to emerge as a number 2 type of guy there in Chicago. Joey Bosa, I think with him, when you factor in the health, you still put him in the ideally a number 2 category. Just from a team construction standpoint, that's how you have to view him. But right now, this season, he's been the old Joey Bosa. You have to at least acknowledge that. But considering he's someone you probably want on more of a pitch count, you're always going to be monitoring his health. The reliability isn't fully there with him at this stage. I think I'll put him in the ideally a number 2 category, but that doesn't mean he hasn't been a great addition for the Bills, who have desperately needed an impact pass rusher. Then Nick Bosa, his brother. The scary thing with Nick Bosa is he's starting to get into some of those Joey Bosa types of conversations where it's like, when he's full go, when he's 100%, there's no doubt what his talent is, and that's an elite guy, a defensive player of the year type of guy. I actually would say Nick Bosa is even better than Joey Bosa at 100%. But the injury's just starting to stack up, and when his brother has also dealt with the durability, the genes are very similar there, it's definitely a concern. Just out of respect for how dominant I think this player is when he's full go, I'm going to keep him in the elite top tier. But how he comes back from this most recent ACL injury, right, and how he's able to stay healthy, it's going to dictate how long he's able to be viewed in that top category. Because as you'll see in today's video, I already left Nick Bonitto out of that elite category. It is rare air for me to put you in that elite spot there. Chris Braswell, still an interesting prospect for me. I think at this point, I actually think Austin Booker is more interesting, and these will be ranked left to right, by the way. At the top of the tier will be the guys I put above. Braswell coming out of Alabama, had a little power. He's got some swipe moves and some finesse to his game. I want to see him become a more consistent player, get some more playing time with the Bucs, and at his size, I would love to see him be a better run defender. That started to come on a little bit more this year, but he's still interesting. He went, I think, at the end of the second round, right, for Tampa, or did he sneak into the third? Yeah, he went second for Tampa. All right, Baron Browning, really explosive player. I enjoy watching Baron Browning. Unfortunately, the production just hasn't been able to be consistent enough for me to even make him like a true number 2. He's not a bad run defender. I do think in a designated pass rush role, he could go in this category. I think at this point, you say ideally he's a number 3. The important note on all these players too, outside of like your prospect categories way down here, I'm not ruling out the chance that any of these guys could get better. This is more of an assessment of where they sit here right now. So definitely a number 3 right now. I still think relatively new to the position, a ton of traits. When he wins, it's insanely fun to watch. He's got some power in there, and he has a really nice inside spin move that works for him. But yeah, he's a 3 until proven otherwise for me. Jordan Burch, he goes in the interesting prospect category as well. I had some Cardinals fans tagging me early in the season, as early as the preseason, where he had a very good preseason. He had a good week 1 for the Cardinals. He's really disappeared since then, which isn't a huge surprise given his college tape. He was a very splash play type of edge rusher, an older prospect, someone that tested really well. The physical tools are in there. I wasn't the biggest fan of his overall game. I felt like he was someone that needed to rush with more power. It was good to see some flashes of that early in his Cardinals career here, but someone that kind of was a 280-pound power rusher by build that just tried to win with his hands and with his cross chop in college. It was a bit of a frustrating watch at times, but it's good to see that they've gotten some of those flashes of power out of him, and we'll see where his career goes there as an interesting prospect for me. Then Brian Burns. You know, I think the natural instinct with Brian Burns is to put him in the true number 1 category. He's especially a guy that when he wins with his athleticism, he's usually able to win quickly and get home and finish sacks. So he does a good job at racking up, mid-teens for sack totals every year, it feels like. And former first-round pick, Florida State, hyper athlete. He gets a lot of credit for his game, but I'd actually go the other way and put him in the ideally a number 2 category. I think is a big reason the Panthers were willing to part with him. There's a lot of games where you just don't feel his presence. If you look at pass rush win rate on him, which is just the raw ability to beat a tackle one-on-one, he's 96th in the NFL among qualifying edge rushers. The wins are exciting. He's a very fun player. I like Brian Burns. But I think realistically, he's a guy that if you could put a better player next to him, he's going to be at his best. And I think that's what they're trying to go for here with Abdul Carter there in the Giants. Then Cameron Thomas, I wanted to sneak him in here. I'm actually going to put him in the interesting prospect category just because we've seen so little of him. Was a mid-round pick by the Cardinals that's been kind of passed around the league, but he's had some really exciting wins for the Browns. He's shown some power. I liked him coming out, wanted to give him a little shout out. He's shown up on the Browns tape this year. Defends the run too. He's got some size. And then there is Abdul Carter. So again, with a guy like Carter, obviously the arrow's pointing up. You're hoping someday he's a true number 1, maybe even an elite guy. His speed, his bend, the different pass rush moves he's flashed, it's insane. But right now, he's still just a number 3. I think especially because the run defense hasn't quite been there for him to the extent that you maybe had hoped with that former linebacker background. He's doing a really hard time. Like, I don't necessarily want to say setting a hard edge, but there's a lot of times where guys get to the perimeter and he's trying to, finish an arm tackle or something and guys get through his reach. The Giants have the worst run defense in the NFL. It's not just Abdul Carter's fault, obviously, but he's contributing to that. A true number 2, typically those are going to be, like Dorrance Armstrong is a much better run defender than Abdul Carter. And then even the pass rushing stuff, it's more in flashes with Carter. Obviously, if you put a gun in my head and said, where do I think Abdul Carter is at the end of next year, I would say at least a number 2, but we got to be realistic. Like it's been an up and down start to his career. He looks good though. Like it's not like we need to have a negative conversation on Abdul Carter. It's just he's got a ways to go still. But then we got K'Lavon Chaisson. He deserves some love here in this video. He's having an awesome season. He's actually 12th in the NFL in pressures, 54th in pass rush win rate. I think the Vrabel system does and always has done a good job manufacturing a lot of pressures for edge rushers. They love to loop these guys inside. A lot of times they really ask them to scream upfield, where they can be a little bit more of those empty pressures where you're just rushing upfield and forcing the QB to step up kind of schematically, like intentionally, so that the DTs can clean things up. And he can absolutely do that with the first round pedigree, the first step, the athleticism. They've even asked him to be a full-time player. He's 36th in the NFL in total defensive snaps. He's had to play a lot of run defense stuff. Hasn't necessarily been as good at that. That's why I'm actually going to put him in as a designated pass rusher. Like, yeah, you can put him as a 3-4 edge, like on early downs, and drop him into coverage and ask him to stop the run. I don't know that he's great at that. The coverage stuff, sure. I think ideally he would be the number 3 guy for you and just zoom after the quarterback, and he's shown he can get you some impressive wins and be an impact player. They're probably asking a little bit more out of him than ideally you would, but he's definitely produced and deserves some love here today. Then we got Bradley Chubb. Bradley Chubb to me is the textbook true number 2. I've never been the biggest Bradley Chubb fan. He's a guy that's had some good production over the years. He doesn't have outstanding traits for the position, and you can just feel certain matchups like he can certainly stall out, but he's very crafty. He's got some power. He's a good run defender. He's like the textbook number 2 guy. I think Miami probably overinvested in him based on who he is, but it doesn't mean he's been a bad player either. Then we have Jadeveon Clowney for the Cowboys. He's actually right there with like Bradley Chubb. In fact, he's over the last 2.5 years probably been a better player. Similar types of trajectories for these guys too, right? 2 top draft picks. Clowney a little more height coming out for sure. But Clowney still has it, man. He's still a very good run defender. I have no idea, by the way, why the Panthers let him go. That made no sense to me, and it was great by the Cowboys. Hey, if you're going to trade away Micah Parsons, I've said this before, but they've done a good job to replenish that edge room. They've added DT talent. Their D-line's actually in a better spot now than it was when they had Micah Parsons, and Clowney's a part of that. He can still get after the QB. He's a really nice true number 2 player. Might find himself in the top couple of players in this tier when all is said and done. Then we got Zaven Collins. He's a 3, but I actually would put him in the specialist category just to kind of highlight what his skill set is. He is genuinely one of the better run defending edge rushers in the league, especially if you want that 3-4 style system where he can play from a 2-point stance but still set a hard edge. And then because he's got that linebacker background, he might be, outside of, I guess, Andrew Van Ginkel, the best coverage dropping edge rusher in the league. He's got genuine feel for space in zone coverage. So you could call him a number 3, and, specialist, it's like maybe, and we're actually a little turned around here. I think I screwed that up. But, you could argue specialist should be like in between this category or even above. Next to designated pass rusher probably makes sense. We can continue to play around with this as I build it out on the fly, but we'll leave it where it's at right there. But as a true pass rusher, you do see some limits on Zaven Collins. Just not this crazy bursty athlete, and he's still kind of learning the position. This is his 3rd year as an edge rusher. He's had some moments, but mostly has been he's been able to stand out for his early down stuff. Then Jonathan Cooper, another true number 2 player. Very nice player for Denver. He got like the definition of a true number 2's contract when they extended him, I think last offseason. He's got an incredible motor. He stops the run. You can drop him into coverage. And then he's got a little bit of everything as a rusher. I wouldn't say he's great at any one thing. He's got decent pop in his hands. He's got decent bend to the corner. He's got some inside counters. He's very Dorrance Armstrong-esque. I think if I were to pick one, I would go with Armstrong, but they're very similar caliber players there. Max Crosby, still got to put him as an elite dude. I will say, I don't know that the last 2 years we've seen this version of Max Crosby through and through. He's still easily a true number 1 guy, but he played through a lot of injuries last year. There was an injury that they probably should have shut him down for last year, and he's just tough as hell that he's gonna say, no, I'm gonna go play. And you could tell sometimes on the tape last year, it's like, yeah, he's just not moving the way you expect. And this year especially, it's like, dude, he is the only player, not just on that D-line, but on the entire Raiders defense. So you can see teams just game planning away from him, double teaming, triple teaming him, forcing anybody on this Raiders defense to make a play. And he's still, 16th in pressures, finding a way to make an impact. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he is still an elite player, but it's worth noting that the arrow's been pointing down a little bit on Crosby. Mike Dana, this is such a frustrating player to no fault of Mike Dana's, but the fact that the Chiefs have asked him for multiple years now to be a true number 2, when realistically, I think Derek Barnett's a better overall player than Mike Dana. You know what I'm saying? I just feel like they're so so largely asking him to play out of role by not fixing that edge group that it's almost unfair. But you definitely feel like there's so many Chiefs games where they need a pass rush and Mike Dana has to go out there as their edge rusher and beat a franchise left tackle. And it's just like he hits a brick wall. Like, he's a good try-hard player. He's got some effort and some pop as a rusher, but not really much. He definitely needs to go down. And I'm now realizing that ideally a number 3 definitely goes above number 3 there. I messed that up earlier, but let's keep moving. So Yaya Diaby, he's had some really exciting flashes, and there were moments last year where it's like, okay, he is like really figuring out his, how to package his incredible athletic traits as a guy that didn't play a lot of edge at Louisville. So he's still like kind of learning the position. He showed a lot of these moments last year. It's tough. He's a fun player. He gets a lot of production in Todd Bowles' defense. He's also not a very good run defender. You could make an argument for him as a K'Lavon Chaisson-esque player, as a designated pass rusher until the run defense comes along, but he's got a little bit more size, and I think I would trust him against the run a little bit better. I think I would have to put him here with like Abdul Carter, Baron Browning, at least right now. Ideally, Diaby would be your 3. I haven't really been too impressed by him this year, unfortunately. The jury's not out on him, though. I think there's still potential for some of the moments we've seen from him to be more of a true number 2 type of guy. Then we got Arnold Ebiketie. Just can't stay healthy. We could almost use a category for just can't stay healthy. I think what we should probably do is just call it number 4 or worse for one reason or another. I think if you guarantee me health and he could start to string some games together, he could be more of a 3, maybe even a low end 2. He's got a good motor, he's got good bend, he's got decent power for a smaller guy, but you cannot depend on him for anything more than being kind of stashed on the depth chart a little bit. Anything you get from him is house money type of deal. And then just to make this more aesthetically pleasing, I also went through and made the color coding system a little bit more friendly to the eyes. You can see how these guys might stack up with more traditional football ranking color coding system there. And speaking of color coding, sports fans, have you seen the SeatGeek app that color codes every single seat to guarantee, as long as you look for the green dots, stay away from the red ones? You will get the most bang for your buck, not just on the SeatGeek app, but market competitive prices always as well. If you're looking to go to an NFL game, or basketball and hockey are in full swing right now as well, or maybe you want to go to a concert, you got a favorite artist you've been wanting to go see for a while. Life is short, you guys. Go to a ball game, go check out a concert, and when you do, my friends at SeatGeek have got you covered. Like I said, great user interface. They make the purchasing experience so convenient, so easy. You're getting the best prices there. They also will give you images of exactly what your seats are going to look like. If you've never been to the venue or you've never sat in a certain section before, you can know what you're going to see from those exact seats. You'll get the tickets right there in the SeatGeek app. You don't have to jump through frustrating email chains and have this stressful experience heading up to the gate. Oh crap, where are my tickets? I don't have this login to that website. None of that on SeatGeek. As long as you're on SeatGeek, you are covered. And right now, if you use code TFG10 on your next purchase, on top of all of this, you will save $20 on your next purchase as well. So go have yourself a good time, save yourself a little bit of money, and support my channel in the process. That is code TFG10 over at SeatGeek. But moving on, Samson Ebukam for the Indianapolis Colts, someone that has unfortunately been dealing with some injuries as of late. Just a couple years ago was definitely a legit number 2 guy. I think at this point, given some of the injury stuff, and I don't think he's been quite as explosive since he's come back, I think you got to say he's more of a number 3 guy. I think I would be pretty comfortable just saying he's a true number 3 until, proven otherwise. I think at this age, that's probably where he's going to settle down, even if he's played at a higher level in years past. Jonah Elliss, probably going to be towards the top of my interesting prospect list. I don't know that he's been consistent enough when he's played to be kind of in the same category as guys like Abdul Carter or Baron Browning. I don't think he's a true number 3. So I'm going to put him in the interesting prospect list, but I thought he was a great value in the third round. He's got a lot of athletic traits. He hasn't had a ton of runway to develop either because Jonathan Cooper and Nick Bonito play a lot, deservedly so. If he had played more, maybe we would be talking about Jonah Ellis a little bit higher here. Then we got Kingsley Enagbare. He is a really nice number 3 for Green Bay, an underrated player. I actually like him more than like Mike Dana, Derek Barnett. I'll drop him behind Abukum. Just because he hasn't shown the highs of that player. But yeah, he does a little bit of everything for Green Bay. He shows up as a pass rusher. He's got some power. He even won on a nasty spin move at a point last year, but he's a good run defender. Really valuable third piece to have. He's kind of a definition of a true number 3, I think. As is AJ Epinesa. Now, at times, they've had to ask him to be more of a 2, but he's definitely a 3. He's an okay run defender. He's an okay pass rusher. He's a splash play type of guy, and he's having a nice year. But he's an interesting guy where you look at him and you're like, oh, he should be a power rusher. Realistically, he actually wins more with his hands as a finesse type of guy. I think I got to put him, just to give him credit for having a good year, I'll put him towards the top of the true number 3 list. Donovan Eziraku. He's having a really nice year, and in some ways, he's maybe even been more consistent, at least over the last 5 or 6 weeks, than the other top rookie edge rusher in this class, Abdul Carter. I'm not ready to put him above Carter quite yet, but it's at least worth noting, like, out the gate, being a more polished player coming out, Eziraku was, he's producing at a very similar level. I think we're probably still a little early to say he's like a bona fide number 2. We're definitely getting there. But I think this feels right for me, at least, between Abdul Carter and Yaya Diaby, just exciting young guys. And again, ideally number 3 is saying they can be your number 2. That's fine. So I guess that does make a lot of sense. It's just realistically, they're probably more 3s at the moment. But I think that's a good spot. Then we got Felix Anaduke Uzama. At this point, the former first-round pick for the Chiefs, I got to put him in the less interesting prospect category. I always thought he was a little bit overdrafted to begin with, just getting that first-round tag. You know, I thought he belonged mid to late second round, but just not a very tradesy guy. He's dealt with injuries. He hasn't really flashed for the Chiefs. I don't know that you really view him as any part of the future until proven otherwise. Then we got Leonard Floyd. He's a true number 3. I would put him probably just above Kingsley Enagbare. Still has some athletic traits. He ends up racking up a lot of pressures in the systems he's been in because he runs a lot of twists and stunts and gets a lot of that schemed up production with his athleticism. But if you want him to win a one-on-one rep, unfortunately, he's never been that guy really as a former number 1 overall pick. Then we got Dante Fowler Jr., also a true number 3. He's had a couple of really nice years back-to-back, though. I think I actually would put him at the top of this category. There's never going to be a point where you're like, yeah, Dante Fowler could be a 2, like these guys in the next tier up. But as a number 3 with Washington, with Dallas the last 3 years or so, he's really been one of the more productive, if not the most productive, true number 3 edge rushers in the league. And yet again this year, he is 40th in the NFL in pressures, despite being 64th in pass rush snaps. So you can see some of the efficiency there. The former first-round pick was a bust to begin with there, but he's turned into a very useful player that's honestly been undercompensated the last couple of years, I would say. Dennis Gardeck. I'm going to put him in the specialist category, and this is where it just gets kind of awkward with the specialists there. I think I will slide it back down. I don't know. It's just tough because, you know, like Zaven's a better player than like Mike Dana, right? So I think for now we'll put it in here. But yeah, former Arizona Cardinal there next to his teammate there. But Gardeck is an effective pass rusher, and I would put him in the designated pass rusher category. But this year it's been a little different. Up until last week when Trayvon Walker was out, he's actually been playing this weak side linebacker role. Think about like what Zach Bond did for the Saints before he became a full-time linebacker, where he did a little bit of hybrid work. And he's done some good stuff as a run defender, as an actual blitzing linebacker in Jacksonville. And then this week with Trayvon Walker out, Gardeck stepped in and showed that he can still be a productive edge rusher. He's a very useful just linebacker specialist that has carved out a very nice career coming out of, I think, Sioux Falls. But here's the bad man, Myles Garrett. He goes at the top of the list, of course. And it almost feels crazy with how dominant he's playing to even have him in the same category as like Nick Bosa and Max Crosby, because it almost feels like Garrett's established another tier 1. But just for convenience sake, I will put him here. But what he's been doing the last couple of years, it's just on a different plane of existence. One of the greatest NFL players to ever sniff a football field. I don't shy away from saying that. If he happens to get one-on-one, the rep is over. But the fact that he is so consistently dealing with not just double teams, but oftentimes it's like a chip help and then slide help, where he has to go through 3 guys. There's so many games where it's like, it is so clear that the offense is just designing their offense to not let Myles Garrett destroy them. And then, by the way, he's still been hyper productive this year on top of all of that. He very well might break the sack record. He's 7th in the NFL in pressures, yet he's in the most disadvantageous circumstance to rack up pressures, because not only is he drawing all this attention, but the Browns are losing a lot of games. So he gets into a lot of run game scripts too. So the volume of pressures isn't going to be there necessarily with some of these other guys, but Jesus, man, he is just so dominant as a player. And then we got Rashawn Gary. I think we've seen Gary get to settle in as a number 2 for Green Bay with Micah Parsons coming in, and this is exactly why this category exists for a guy like Rashawn Gary that's had to be a 1 for a while, that's had very productive seasons, but can't always take over games in the way that you want a number 1 to be able to do. And I think settling in as a number 2, it's been a great spot for Gary, where he's been able to get isolated looks, win one-on-one reps, and he's made some very impactful plays still. So he's a very good number 2 type of guy that if he has to be year 1, it's like, okay, but the second you're able to upgrade there, you love him as a number 2. So that's exactly why that tier exists for a guy like that. Ashton Gillotte, he goes on here because he's played. I'm going to put him next to FAU. I'm not super fascinated in Gillotte. I just don't see a ton of pass rushing traits there, but he is a very solid run defender. 3rd round pick here for the Chiefs, deserves at least a mention. And he's made some good early down plays. One thing the Chiefs do well is stop the run on early downs, and Gillotte's been a part of that. Maybe someday we're talking about him as a run defense specialist, or maybe the pass rushing stuff really clicks. But right now we're talking about a guy that, of 117 eligible pass rushers, he's 114th in pass rush win rate. By the way, right behind him there, Mike Dana at 115th. Goes to show you how much the Chiefs need to find somebody else in this edge room. Brandon Graham just came back. We've hardly seen him. I would put him in the specialist role. You could argue for a designated pass rusher, but he can still stop the run if that's what you want to ask him to do. It just kind of depends what you want Brandon Graham to do. Again, we've hardly seen him, but I feel like he looks relatively in shape and still a useful player. I think that's a safe spot for Graham. Carl Granderson, I really like Carl Granderson, and he's had to be the number 2 for the Saints for a long time. If we did this last year, I think him next, being a Dorrance Armstrong or Jonathan Cooper-esque figure would make sense. The thing is, he's been really inefficient this year to the point where I think you say he's ideally a number 3, and I think I would drop him there between Yaya and Baron Browning. Having to get in a 2-point stance in Brandon Staley's defense just hasn't really worked. I think he can get back to being that heavy-handed power rusher that he's shown, and be a more effective run defender as more of a hand in the dirt D end. I predicted this like a week ago, but calling it now, Carl Granderson, mid-March gets traded to the Chicago Bears for either a 4th or a 5th round pick to reunite with Dennis Allen and give them another edge rusher that they really need. Then we got Mike Green. He goes in the interesting prospect category. Not going to touch on his off-field stuff. I've dove into that plenty since he got drafted. But honestly, he's been disappointing for the Ravens. Very disappointing. Certainly doesn't belong in any of these tiers above of guys that have at least earned like legitimate playing time for something that they do well. He's got to go down here with like Austin Booker, Jonah Ellis, of guys that like, well, there's pass rushing upside in there. He defended the run pretty well for a smaller guy at Marshall, but he has really struggled against the run for Baltimore. And they've asked him to play a ton, by the way. He's 19th in the NFL in total snaps played among edge rushers. He's been a legitimate problem, and that's been a surprise to me. I really thought that from a football perspective, he was going to step in and look like something that, was in consideration for a top 10 to 15 pick in the draft. Outside of some reps where he shows that crazy bend that he has with his traits, there just hasn't really been much to write home about with him. Jonathan Grenard up next. I think Grenard is someone that's been so productive for the last few years, even going back to his last year in Houston where he really broke through. But he's been someone that I think is an example of someone that if you ask him to be your number one, that's okay. Ideally, he would be a number two. Ideally for the Vikings, Dallas Turner takes that leap to be more of a Nick Bonito-esque figure, or maybe you can pair him with an Andrew Van Ginkel, and it's like, well, we might not have a true number one, but we got two really good guys. Like that's a perfectly reasonable setup. But I do think as ideally a number two, and I would actually put him above Rashawn Gary. Vikings fans will like to see that one. I think Grenard has been a more consistent QB pass rusher at getting after the QB, beating guys one-on-one. I think he actually rushes with more power than Rashawn Gary. That's something from Gary that you do wish he would lean into that bull rush a little bit more. Gary loves to go to that speed rush. I mean, he's got 4.5 speed with a ton of size. It's unique, but Grenard isn't the athlete, but I think understands the craft of rushing the passer a little bit more, and it's led to more production. Yetur Gross-Matos made the list just because the Niners are paying him, but he's an okay run defender. He wins occasionally with some athleticism, but he, to me, he's a number 4 or worse. I don't even really view him as a true number 3 type of guy because he's, even at least like Mike Dana is a good run defender. You know what I'm saying? Yetur Gross-Matos is still just kind of the idea of him, the athlete coming out of Penn State. Then we've got Derek Hall. Fun younger pass rusher for Seattle. I think he's sniffed number 2 territory at times, and he's had a pretty good year. He's actually 7th in the NFL in pass rush win rate. He's a tough one. I feel like he still disappears in a lot of games in a way that even guys like Cooper and Dorrance Armstrong don't. I'm curious what Seahawks fans think of this one. Because I think my gut has him more in this category with like Yaya Diaby, Carl Granderson. I think I'd put him above Yaya right there. And I know I've moved these tiers around a million times. We'll eventually settle in the right spot here, but I'm going to slide ideally a 3 above there. So Chaison's not above these other guys because I don't think Chaison's better than any of these guys. Maybe Baron Browning. But then we got Trey Hendrickson. Been battling through some injuries this year, but as a pass rusher, he's elite. He is in this top category. The one thing with Hendrickson, and it's a bit of a holdup on Bonito as well, is he's not the run defender of any of these guys. And I think if you're talking about really putting these guys on a special plane of existence where there's not really anything to pick apart in their game, at least with Hendrickson, it's like the shorter arms can show up in his ability to get off blocks and make an impact as a run defender in a way that it doesn't impact these other guys. I go back and forth with him. I just want to acknowledge pass rushing alone, yes, he is in this realm of game-wrecking forces, but I think as an overall player, I'd have to put him in there more with Nick Bonito. Nick Herbig, fascinating guy to try to place here because you could argue he's an interesting prospect. You could argue he's more of a specialist. You could argue he's a number 2 based on just how efficient he's been. I think, this has kind of turned into more of a prospect-esque range of guys with upside. I think that probably feels like a good home for Nick Herbig here, but dude, he has been so fun. I think I'd even put him over Eziraku, but I'm going to leave him behind Abdul Carter there. But man, 4th round pick coming out of Wisconsin. It's lazy to just compare him to TJ Watt. It's obviously high praise, but just in terms of like maybe more compare him to Alex Highsmith is maybe more fair. But just in terms of like how he likes to win with that dip and rip move around the corner. But I think when you look at Highsmith, teaching Herbig a little bit more of those inside counters as well, something I think TJ Watt has even learned some inside moves this year from Highsmith, because Watt's basically been Mariano Rivera, where he's always been able to win with just that one dip and rip move. Herbig has a bunch of different ways he wins with. He's got legit potential to be at least a number 2, but there's even like a hint of like a Nick Bonito type of at least efficiency there with Nick Herbig, but obviously like he's behind maybe the best, probably the second best edge rush duo in the NFL right now in Pittsburgh. So he gets a limited playing time, but he definitely deserves his love. And then we have Alex Highsmith. Highsmith's been so good, man. I think I like Highsmith better than Burns. Joey Bosa is obviously a unique situation. I would put Highsmith over him. We haven't had to see Highsmith be the legit number 1 because TJ's always been there, and until that happens, I probably can't make that leap. But he might be the best number 2, like true number 2 in the league. Not counting Danielle Hunter, who, spoiler alert, is going to end up above, in this category, but he really is the complete package, man. He's developed so well as that hyper athlete coming out of University of Charlotte. He's got a little bit of power in there that can be sneaky at times, but his bend, his inside spin move is one of the best spin moves, if not the best in the entire league. He has honestly been the better overall pass rusher compared to TJ Watt over the last couple of years, but that comes with the grain of salt that TJ Watt still mostly gets all of the chip assists and the slide help and all that stuff, whereas Highsmith's been able to capitalize on getting the one-on-ones. So that's a relevant part of the conversation, but he's just outstanding. Then we got Josh Hines Allen. He is a true number 1. I'm going to put him above Nick Bonito. He's bounced back this year after last year's regime had him put on a bunch of weight, and we saw his production dip. He's basically back to being that dominant number 1 guy. I'm not quite prepared to put him up into this category at this point in time. I think you go back to 2023, which was his best season. He was playing at a level that, 90 pressure, 19 sack season. That's like absurd defensive player of the year type of production. I don't think Josh Hines Allen's quite a defensive player of the year candidate right now, but certainly outpacing what he did last year and has been a big reason the Jags defense is relatively back this year. Michael Hoyt, was a bummer to see him get hurt after he just came back from the suspension, but he's a nice number 3. He's almost kind of a specialist just because he's such a unique player. For a while, he was listed over 300 pounds. I don't know if he's still listed, but I think it's been confirmed he plays at about 280 as someone that came into the league as more of a D-tackle type of figure. But with the Rams, he was always this oversized edge rusher that like led the league in dropping into coverage, and he's just a unique scheme piece. But I think overall, you talk about him as a pretty capable pass rusher, a pretty good run defender, a nice overall number 3 piece. Then we got James Houston. If we got a larger sample size, I'd be willing to compare him to like K'Lavon Chaisson and drop him right there. But he's had kind of a rocky career after being a no-name guy that came into the league for Detroit and looked really good out the gate. I want to say he had a sack in like his first 5 starts or something like that. It was some crazy stat coming into the league. But then Detroit just kind of gave up on him. I don't really know why. But Dallas, again, sneaky good year for their front office. They pick him up, and he's actually shown up as an impactful player. He's even had some splash plays against the run. I think just because of the lack of playing time, even though he's been in the league for an extended period of time at this stage, I think I'd put him in here with the interesting prospects. I think I'm going to put him here after Cameron Thomas, who I do like what we've seen in Cleveland, but above some of these other more recently drafted guys. Houston's got some juice. He does. All right, Bryce Huff. I know exactly where he needs to go, and it's right here. It's up here, but then we're getting awkward with K'Lavon Chaisson. You know what? Just to make this a better overall list, I'm gonna move Chaisson down here with like Yaya Diaby and Derek Hall. I think I would put him right there. And again, they've asked him to defend the run at times this year, and you can drop him into coverage and do some stuff with him as an early down, going back to Chaisson. So that works. Bryce Huff, just like, he's not a run defender. He doesn't have the length or play strength really to be that guy, but he is the textbook DPR, where you can't really make him a full-time number two, even though San Francisco, with their cacophony of injuries this year, has had to ask him to do that. Man, just third down, letting him pin his ears back, come off the edge as a wide 9, with the bend and the get off he has. He can get up under your pads and bull rush you a little bit. He's got inside counters. He is an excellent player to watch for any sort of pass rusher that doesn't have like elite traits. But if you've got a good first step, if you're maybe a little bit shorter as well, and you're good at kind of getting natural leverage, Bryce Huff weaponizes what he has extremely well. And it's been really fun to see him bounce back, reunited with Robert Saleh. That was one of my favorite quiet moves of the offseason for sure, and it's paid off. There's been games where it feels like that individual move has like saved their at least season on the defensive side of things, because he's the only semblance of a pass rush they have right now. All right, Jalix Hunt, he belongs in this category. He's racked up a lot of pressures. He had a beautiful interception defending a screenplay against Caleb Williams. Very raw guy coming into the league, but he's shown a lot of flashes. I think we put him probably between Granderson and Baron Browning, but that definitely feels about his range right now. Then we have Danielle Hunter, who we teased earlier. He's going to go up here. I think we got to put Danielle near the top of this list. I think because of him being a more complete player. I mean, man, Trey Hendrickson versus Danielle Hunter, it's a tough debate right now. It's recency bias. You'd go with Danielle Hunter because he's on an absolute tear while Trey's been hurt. I still think Trey's overall pass rushing ability is a tick above Danielle, to give him the edge there. Like, I don't think Danielle has much of an argument to be up here at all, whereas Hendrickson, at least the pass rushing, we could argue for him to be up there. So Danielle belongs towards the top of the true number ones. We've seen him be the best pass rusher on his team. In fact, the last 2 years, he's been that for Houston while Will Anderson has developed into the monster that he is today. But the fact that that has now happened, and you still have Danielle Hunter, who's having every bit a career year still, it's just insane. And then you got Aiden Hutchinson. We can drag him back up to the top of the list as well. He, to me, has emerged as this tier 1 player. And honestly, with the injuries to Bosa and even Crosby a little bit last year slowing down, Hutchinson also gets that same excuse that Max Crosby gets, where he's going to get a lot of that attention. Yeah, you got to Lee McNeil. He's a good player, but for the most part, teams are trying to take Aiden Hutchinson out of the game, and they just can't do it. He's been unbelievable. I figured he would be in this range when he came out. I didn't know they quite had the upside to get up into this category, which he has. I think the power's been even better than you could have imagined coming out of Michigan. He has one of the biggest bags of pass rushing moves in the league. His ability to know what to go to and when to go to it. And then he has like incredible quickness for a bigger guy, like the spin move he has. I know we said that Highsmith might have the best spin move in the league, right? Aiden Hutchinson might need a shout out in that regard as well. Then we got Landon Jackson. He is an interesting prospect. He deserves to make this list. He hasn't really played a whole lot for Buffalo, but a very traitsy guy that just was hyper raw coming out. I think I will put, he's very, very comparable to Austin Booker, I would say, just hasn't even shown the flashes of a Booker. Then we got Jermaine Johnson. I think I'm good with Jermaine Johnson up here as a true number 2, because that's where he was at when he was healthy. It's been a long road to recovery for him, but I think the last few weeks he's been mostly back. I think he's an outstanding overall player, still with a very bright future, as long as the recovery from that Achilles tear, right, can continue to go well. Draymond Jones, Ravens just gave up what's probably going to be a 4th round pick for him. That was a lot. He's a true number 3. He can win as a rusher. He's a big-bodied guy. He's not as good of a run defender as he should be at his size, but he's an okay player. Then we got Cam Jordan as well. Credit where credit's due. Cam Jordan's had a nice year for the Saints. He continues to defend the run very well. He's had some flashes as a pass rusher. He's still definitely a number 3 caliber type of guy. Obviously not what he used to be, but I think I'd put him, that feels good right there, between Epinesa and Abuka. George Karlaftis. He, to me, is the prototype number 2 player. He's a very high-end number 2. His pressure numbers end up insane. But I don't know, man. Every time I go to watch George Karlaftis, I'm never fully moved by the tape. It's a lot of the quarterback ran because Chris Jones was getting in there, and Karlaftis kind of like half beat his man. But I still feel like Karlaftis is a 2. And it's not like Rashawn Gary or Grenard where if he were your 1, you're okay with it. Like, because he's on the Chiefs and you have Chris Jones there, it's a different conversation. But relatively speaking, like, there's not really a scenario where I think you can survive with Karlaftis as your 1. I don't know that the Chiefs are thriving with that defensive line. I think, him more as a Clowney, Jermaine Johnson caliber player, even if the pressure totals are going to tell you he's a better player than that. We've got the tape, right? Like, NFL Pro makes it so easy now. In 10 minutes, you can go with an NFL Pro subscription and watch all of George Karlaftis's pass rush pressures, and he's not as dominant as anybody in those tiers above him. He's just not. So I'm comfortable with him in that spot. I'm curious what Chiefs fans think of that. Kyle Kennard, interesting prospect, deserves a shout out. Although for me, Kennard's probably more of a less interesting prospect. I still liked him better than Ashton Gelati coming out, and he hasn't played a ton for the Chargers. He's got a heavy-handed edge skill set to become a 3 as a early down player someday. Then we got Arden Key. He's not so much the prospect that a lot of the guys in this category are, but he is the definition of ideally a number 3. The Titans have asked him to be a number 1, honestly, which is a disgrace. But he's an effective overall player. I think if he's your 2, you're almost always saying we could do a little bit better there. But if he's your 3, that's a pretty cozy situation. I think I would put him behind Yaya and above Kayvon. Okay, Malcolm Kuntz. He's a tough one because since he came back from injury, he just has not shown flashes at all. Honestly, Kuntz probably needs to go back into the interesting prospect category because that's what he was before his breakout season in 2024. Or no, it's a whole nother year. 2023, he broke out. And then 2024, I think he tore his ACL. And this year, he's been really inefficient. So I would put him probably with Mike Green, Austin Booker, guys that you're still interested to see if they can emerge. But they brought him back on a 1-year deal, and he's probably going to hit the market again. Okay, then we got Harold Landry. Hey, credit where credit's due. Landry's had a very nice year this year. Feels like he's cooled off a little bit as of late after a really explosive start to his season. And, I think with that, I would drop him down to ideally a number 3. The Patriots are asking more of him. I think you see Chason is better at winning pass rush reps, but Landry's probably a more complete player in terms of the run defense side of things, where he is very persistent as a run defender. So I think I would put him right in this category. These guys are all kind of tightly knit in the, they've been teammates, they've been Mike Vrabel guys. They're all kind of relatively similar. Makes sense to have them there together. All right, Laiatu Latu. I think he deserves to go in the number 2 category at this point. He's been very productive, had a good rookie season. He's made strides this year. He's been a pretty solid run defender. Some of the plays he's making in coverage show off just how coordinated this guy is as an athlete, and that shows up as a pass rusher as well. I think this feels good for me as a true number 2. He's not quite like these other guys where if he's your 1, I can survive with that. I think we're still a little bit behind that, but he's shown a little bit more power this year. He's got so much finesse. The future is very bright for Laiatu Latu to get here pretty soon. Like if we did this last year, he would have been in this category. Now he's climbed up here. We can get there someday. I'm not quite there yet with Latu. DeMarcus Lawrence, he's a tough one. He's kind of a specialist in the sense that you got to keep an eye on his pitch count. But his game is not specialized at all. Like he is talent-wise probably a true number 2. But he's missed so much time over the years. I think ideally, like this makes sense for him to be just like the perfect, ideally a number 3 kind of guy. Like you're not looking at DeMarcus Lawrence and like, yeah, that's our plug and play number 2 edge rusher. You know what I'm saying? But as a 3 where it's like wherever we need you, you can contribute and you'll be able to basically rotate with everybody else, get as many snaps as any number 3 edge rusher in the league, but you're not going to play as much as a guy like Cooper or any of these true number 2s would. That feels right. Khalil Mack, he's still he's still up here. I think him and Joey Bosa together make a lot of sense. I mean, the former teammates there. I think I'd still put Mack over Bosa. He's still been Bosa's been really good this year when he's played. But if you look at the last 3 years of resume, or at least the last 2 years, I think you got to go give Mack a slight nod there. Obviously, he's been pretty banged up this year. He's had a more quiet season after a good start. We'll have to kind of continue assessing at his age how he reacts to this latest injury, which, his arm was in a sling, right? It was a shoulder, which is a big part of being able to rush the passer. So he's a tough one to rank, but I like that placement. Then we got Boye Mafe. Just find Derek Hall and put him next to him. I mean, these two guys have basically been mirror images. Both second-round picks, 2 guys, both of them, I think, struggled out the gate in their rookie year, but then figured out the next year. I think Derek Hall is the better player than Boye Mafe at this stage in time, but it's still a conversation. I don't think he's a number 2. I don't. I think he's got enough limits as a pass rusher. He wins. He has some big games in certain matchups where he wins with those swipes and the finesse. I wish he rushed with more power. And Derek Hall's kind of the opposite, where he's almost all power and not enough finesse. If you could merge these 2 players, you'd have, I don't know, Will Anderson. But those 2 guys together, I think Seahawks fans would agree. Then Jacob Martin. It's been a nice number 3 this year and last year for the Bears. He showed some really nice flashes. I like his game. You're never going to give him full playing time, but as a veteran that's been very underrated over the years, he kind of stepped in and replaced Dante Fowler. I think that makes a lot of sense. He's been like maybe the one pleasant surprise on the Commanders' defense this year is Jacob Martin. It's not really where you want to be with a 30-year-old journeyman, but I guess he deserves his shout. Then we got Will McDonald. Until the run defense gets there, I view him just like Bryce Huff, where the pass rushing's awesome, man. And Will McDonald has really impressed me with his overall game. I think, again, if the run defense can come along, he can be, someone in this range. I don't want to quite say as Nick Bonito upside, but, there's the same idea where, like, the bend, the get off, talk about a great inside spin move. Will McDonald absolutely has that. He's a hyper-productive guy, and when he wins, he typically gets home. Like, he can rack up a lot of sacks in a hurry. He's a really nice player. He's just not super complete. And honestly, just kind of eyeballing this, I almost think you could, depending on who else we put in the designated pass rusher category, could maybe put this here for now, because I think I would put both these guys over as even if they're one-dimensional guys, I still think they're better overall players than these guys. it's just the nuance of the conversation gets interesting. So we'll leave that there for now and see where this goes. Isaiah McGuire, I think he's a very solid number 3 player. Maybe he surprises us and continues to kind of check boxes and becomes more than that, but he's been a really good run defender that's had some splashes as a pass rusher for the Browns. He's got a nice power profile. He's a sneaky good player there for Cleveland as a part of that D-line. Then we got Von Miller. He's a specialist and not a particularly good one at this point in his career. I think I would put him still above Brandon Graham, but he needs to be on such a pitch count, and he can still get after the QB. He hasn't been as good at it as he was last year, where he was frankly one of the more efficient pass rushers in the league last year. It hasn't been the case, but he can still play a little bit, just limited looks. Al-Quadin Muhammad, man, he's had to be the number 2 for Detroit this year, and he's actually been serviceable at it. That's an outlier on his career, and he's into his 30s at this point, so I don't know how replicable that is. Honestly, like kind of the same idea of Isaiah McGuire, where if you're just saying what is he as a skill set, he's a really nice run defender, a number 3 edge guy that has some pop in his hands and can win as a power rusher at times. But I think I would put him just as a credit to how good he's been this year. I think I'll put him at the top of this list right now because he really has been serviceable as the Lions' number 2 this year. I just don't know how replicable that is, and it feels like he's cooled off a little bit in recent weeks as well. Myles Murphy. I think Myles Murphy goes in the interesting prospects category. He's come on a little bit as of late. I'm actually going to put him at the top of this list. Former first-round pick, has a lot of power as a rusher, and again, you're starting to see some things start to click here in year 3. We figured it was always going to be a multi-year development with him. Maybe a little bit later than you'd like to see, but it's good that some of the lights are coming on with him, and he does have legitimate potential. We just haven't seen enough from him to this point in time. And then dropping Mykel Williams right after him, right next to Myles Murphy, makes a lot of sense. First round pick, very raw, coming out, just hasn't played well for the Niners. I think as a run defender, he can do his thing there, but how much his pass rushing skill set's able to develop is going to be critical for his career. He's got the length, he's got some power to his game, he's got some quick feet, and some ways in college he flashed some finesse style wins as well. So there's a variety of different ways they could go with him. I wouldn't even hate him making more of a Eric Armstead-esque transition to true interior D-line, kind of being their John Franklin Myers. Unfortunately, he went down about a third of the way through the year. So we just, we're still very, very fresh on Mykel Williams, this year's first round pick. Anthony Nelson for the Bucs. He's spent a lot of years as a quality number 3 for them. Been a very good run defender that can splash as a rusher. Hasn't quite been the same guy as of late, but kind of as a Mike Dana-esque figure that works for me. Uchenna Nwosu. He's had a nice year for Seattle. He's kind of a specialist. He's not a number 2. I don't think you're really putting him in this category. I like this as a placement for him. They do so many different things for him, right? He can set a hard edge against the run. He can drop into coverage. He's really good as a looping stunter in that system. He can win one-on-one reps, but I think if Zaven's in this category, Uchenna Nwosu makes sense too. Someone that was kind of a hybrid piece coming out. That's been certainly an edge rusher at the next level, but has a very diverse skill set. And I think with Dayo Odeyingbo, I think he also goes in this category. Now, he's had a down year, man. I'm going to put him here actually behind Dennis Gardeck, who is having a good year. Dayo does a little interior, a little edge. He's kind of a number 3, so that, again, the tier makes sense for Dayo. But he had one of the worst pressure rates in the league this year. He looked like a disastrous signing for the Bears before he unfortunately got hurt this year. He was at his best rushing as an interior player for the Colts, and in Dennis Allen's defense, he mostly tried to treat him like Cam Jordan as that big edge and played a lot of 5-tech. I'm curious if they ever want to change that and just kind of let him do what he does well. But he's definitely a unique player that goes in that category. BJ Ojulari feels very Arnold Ebiketie-esque to me, where it's just like, the health has really derailed him as a second-round pick. We just haven't seen enough from him Maybe he's a little bit younger. You'd say he's more of a less interesting prospect, but I don't think we can really count on much from Ojulari at this point until proven otherwise. And then his brother, Aziz Ojulari. Unfortunately, these guys have had just very similar career trajectories, and I would put him down here as well. Ebiketie and the Ojulari brothers, all relatively similar careers to this point. Then we got Oluwafemi Oladejo, the second-round pick for the Titans. He's an interesting prospect. He has shown some flashes this year, especially as a run defender. I think because of the pre-draft evaluation, I'd still put him behind Mike Green. But I'm curious to see what his career has in store for him. He unfortunately got hurt after just starting to show some flashes this year, so we haven't seen too much of him. Then we got Charles Omenihu. Him and Dio are kind of similar figures there. I think Omenihu's better, but someone that plays a little edge, plays a little interior, okay overall player, but nothing too special. Again, that Chiefs D-line is looking for some more guys to make an impact, and Omenihu really hasn't been able to do that for the majority of this season, and really in the 3 years that he's been a member of the Chiefs as well. Then we got Joseph Asai. He's had a nice year, man. He's definitely been the best D lineman on the Bengals, and they've needed him to be their number one with Trey Hendrickson out. He's up to 37 pressures on the year on 338 pass rush snaps, so he clears that 10% pressure threshold. He's been pretty good against the run. I actually think this is the right tier for him, ideally a number 3 category with a bunch of these guys that maybe are trending up. Osai was considered as a first-round candidate and then ended up falling into the 3rd. I always thought he had good athleticism, some pretty good traits. I don't know that he'll ever have the true power profile to climb much further than this. But I think I will put him in like Arden Key. He's actually very similar as an overall player to Arden Key. So I think we'll put him right behind Key, who's done it for a little bit longer. Then we got Odafe Owe. Not what a lot of people wanted him to be coming out, obviously, being that first-round pick. And even over the years, he's gotten some hype in Baltimore, but he just has never taken that step. There's a reason Baltimore got rid of him. He showed some flashes in his first couple games as a Charger and then has gotten pretty quiet recently. I think I would put him behind Yaya Diaby and above Harold Landry as ideally a number 3. There's been times where he's been a 2, and it's like, yeah, if we got a good DT and a good edge rusher opposite of Owe, like that's fine-ish. But realistically, like he is for the Chargers now, should be your 3. Or at least ideally for the Chargers, that would be the case with Mack and Tooley in there. Then we got Micah. Pretty quick conversation. I mean, he's been one of the more well-covered players in the league this year. What he's doing with Green Bay, what he did with Dallas for all those years. I mean, he is obviously perennial defensive player of the year, elite of the elite. I still don't even understand how he does it at times. There's so many times where it's like he's not even using a pass rush move, yet he still just like slips off of 3 different guys trying to block him. He's just such a unique pass rusher. It feels like he's coated in oil before the game, but he makes it work. And it's not that he doesn't have other pass rush moves too, but his ability to win that way just really puts it over the top for him. I think the only real debate here is Micah or Will Anderson. Like those two guys have had such incredible seasons. I think Micah with the track record, you still put above Will Anderson, but there's an argument that Will is even playing above Micah, but I'm not quite ready to go there. Micah has, Will Anderson's kind of the new toy in that conversation that you want to play with, whereas, yeah, Micah's been doing this for years, but we talk about him in this category for a reason, right? And just like Will Anderson, Micah has ended 3 or 4 different games for Green Bay, almost single-handedly at times. Josh Paschal, he's a 3. He's a good run defender. Hasn't been able to stay healthy recently, but for what they ask him to do, he's nice. Former second-round pick. You probably don't make that draft pick again just because of the lack of pass rushing abilities, but hopefully he can get back out there for Detroit because he's a big part of what they want to do with some of their hybrid fronts. Then we got Kwity Paye, very disappointing first round pick for the Colts. He is a true number 3, in my opinion. He's got a lot of balance as a player, but there's really nothing that he does that stands out to you. I'm going to leave him behind AJ Epinesa there. I think that makes sense. A couple of guys that you wish rushed with a little bit more power than they do, but can win with some quickness at times and are pretty solid run defenders. Then we got James Pierce Jr. I really like what we've seen from James Pierce. I think right now as a number 3 with potential, just like some of these prospects we've been talking about. I think I'm going to put him, though, a little bit lower than like Ezeraku as a rookie. I think I would put him probably above Owe, but behind Diaby. But very underrated power for a guy that came out weighing in at 245. He's got really good inside swipes. He's got a bunch of different ways that he likes to win. And he's been between the 2 rookies for the Falcons. And I'm going to grab Jalen Walker and actually drop him up here too, because they've been very similar overall calibers. I think James Pierce, in terms of lining up and beating a guy one-on-one, has been a little bit better than Jalen Walker, whereas Jalen Walker's actually stopping the run. He's a little bit more scheme diverse with all the twists and stunts and the ability to kind of line up as a linebacker. But these 2 guys have been what Atlanta realistically could have hoped for. Neither of them have been like slam dunks or like hit the ground as, surefire defensive rookie of the year type of candidate types of guys, but both have played well within this system and been good picks for them. And hopefully they can rack up a few more wins so that you don't end up giving a top 10 pick to the Rams for James Pierce Jr., because that's really the one caveat when I said they did that. I was like, I don't hate it. I really like James Pierce. Just make sure you're not giving a top 10 draft pick to the LA Rams for that. So we'll see where that one goes. Then we got Jalen Phillips. Where do we put Jalen Phillips at this point? I'm just going to drop him there for a second while we discuss. So many injuries with him that we haven't really seen him fully get things rolling. Whereas, before some of these injuries popped up, he was looking like one of the better young pass rushers in the league. I don't know that he's fully got that twitch, the speed to power that we saw earlier in his career. He still has a little bit of that. He's got a lot of juice still in there. He's a pretty good run defender. I think he's probably a true number 2 if you're being real about it. I think he's probably better as an overall player than Karlaftis. I think I would prefer Latu to Phillips. Honestly, with Phillips losing a little bit of a step, him and Latu are actually pretty damn similar overall players right now. So we'll make him a true number 2. It was a good trade for the Eagles. I don't know that this guy is still in there. Maybe he can get there, but until proven otherwise, we'll say he's a legit established true number 2. And he'll be an interesting free agent to track as well after the Eagles traded for him here. Then Hassan Reddick. He has really had a falling out. Honestly, probably ideally would be a 3 at this stage is probably how you talk about Reddick. He's not truly a specialist. I like what we've done with the designated pass rusher role with these 2 guys ranking above all of these players. And Reddick just isn't of that category yet. So I think as a number 3 for Reddick, maybe all the way down here with like Carl Granderson, who's having a down year, but this is 2 bad years for Reddick at this point. Obviously, just a couple years ago, he was rushing at an incredibly high rate, but he just hasn't been that guy. So I think I'll put him right here. Like I think Chason, for example, who's also a little undersized and not a great run defender, he's just a better overall pass rusher than Reddick at this point. I think it's not that Reddick's entirely useless, but just certainly not. I thought he was going to have a good bounce back year on the Bucs, and it just hasn't happened. All right, we're getting close to the bottom here. Chop Robinson, very disappointing second season here. After the second half of last year was insane for Chop. I think, especially considering he's not really a run defender, and we can make a case for Chop up here, but he's still so young that I don't think we need to pigeonhole him into there. I think more like next to Abdul Carter, former teammate there, works for me. Nick Herbig, not a bad comparison. That makes sense. You just need to see him recapture the juice that he showed at the end of his rookie season, where he was one of the more efficient pass rushers from, November 1st onward. This year, that guy just hasn't been there. 11 pressures on 133 snaps, so he's under a 10% pressure rate. Pass rush win rate is 75th compared to 11th last year, so the fall off has been real. Still hope he can get things back, though, because the tape was real in that rookie year. I just don't really know where it went. That's probably a different video for a different day to ask what the hell happened to Chop Robinson. Then Greg Rousseau. I think in many ways he's the Bills' version of George Karlaftis, drafted at the end of the first round, gets the payday, still a really good player, but a lot of games where you watch that Bills defense and you're like, can you just get a little bit more from Greg Rousseau, please? Like, can he just be a dominant player when you need him to be a dominant player? He has these great games at times, but then he can disappear at times. Excellent run defender, though. That probably sets him above even some of these other guys. I think he's probably the best true number 2 on this list, but there's really not a scenario where I view him as like being okay as your number 1 guy like I do the rest of the guys in that category. So we'll leave him at the top of number 2. Chris Rumph playing well as an early down overall player for the Saints. I don't know that we're quite ready to call him a true number 3, but at the same time, he's probably better than Mike Dana. You know what? Let's do this. Let's just be honest about Mike Dana. Even though he's had to be the number 2 for the Chiefs, he probably should be a number 4 or worse. I don't know that he's such a great run defender to say he's still a true number 3, despite a complete lack of pass rush capabilities. Then we got Jack Sawyer. Interesting prospect, but honestly, I just think Jack Sawyer is what he is, and said that about him coming out, where I thought he was always mock drafted a little bit too high at times because he just doesn't have the pass rushing traits to be much of an impact player. But I felt like day one, you have a quality run defender, someone that can show some craft as a pass rusher, that'll jump up and deflect passes, can drop into coverage. As a useful number 3 player, different systems, but like Anthony Nelson, Derek Barnett, same idea with Jack Sawyer. Very useful number 3 player to have. And even though he's young, I feel like the Steelers got what they paid for with that draft pick. Then we got Nick Scordon for the Panthers. He's looked really good as a rookie. I think we go right into this cluster of, ascending number 3s, if you will. I think NFC South fans can have some fun with this one. I think Scordon has been right there with Walker and Pierce. I think I prefer him to Odafe Oweh just straight up. I think he's already maybe a more complete player. I think I actually am going to split the 2 Falcons guys and put Scordon in the middle there. Just because I think Scordon's been a little bit more useful on early downs, and as a pass rusher, he's been comparable to James Pierce. A lot of fun ways that Nick Scordon's able to win, and I think right now, ideally, yeah, he would be a number 3 because it's the Panthers. He's had to be their number 1, but that's just the caliber of player that Scordon I think currently is. But I think someday, my pro comp on him was George Karlaftis, and I see a lot of that in his game. I think he can get there before long, just with some more proven tape out there. Then we got Nolan Smith. He's missed a lot of time this year, so you almost have to default to what we saw at the end of last year, which, again, would probably drop him into this tier of players where I don't know that we're fully on board with saying, yeah, Nolan Smith is a bona fide number 2. You can ask him to be that and hope he can continue to get better and be pretty reasonably happy with that. I think with him, with some of these other undersized guys, I think Chop's highs last year are still extremely encouraging that he can get that back. I think you put Nolan Smith above Nick Herbig. But honestly, Nolan Smith, Nick Herbig, pretty damn similar players overall. But let's grab our next player here, Charles Snowden. I just wanted to give Charles Snowden a little bit of love, get a second in this video because he's made some plays for the Raiders this year. Picked off Shedeur, but realistically, he's not you know, I think if he continues to do this, maybe we get up to like a kind of being similar to like a Dennis Gardick, where he's this kind of hybrid linebacker that can do a little bit of everything. Realistically, he hasn't done enough quite yet for me to do that, but want to give him a little bit of love. I think I'll put him behind Arnold Ebiketie and above Yetur Gross-Matos. Then Josiah Stewart. I think we put him in the interesting prospect category. He's been pretty good when the Rams have used him, but it's been pretty minimal looks. I think similar to a Myles Murphy, where you're encouraged by some of the stuff you've seen this season. You hope he can continue to climb. I liked Stewart coming out. I thought he was a value for the Rams. I think as some sort of maybe Uchenna Nwosu or even like a Will McDonald, you know, number 3, 2.5 type of guy, that's kind of his upside. But for now, in the interesting prospect category. Shemar Stewart, also interesting prospect. I think I default to him just below Mykel Williams. I mean, honestly, both these guys, Shemar Stewart and Mykel Williams, were tightly knit coming out, and based on what we've seen this year, where it's been very minimal. I mean, Shemar Stewart looked really good week 1 against the Browns, and then looked horrible, and then he got hurt. Mykel Williams, likewise, has just had some flashes and then got hurt. So pretty easy to kind of just say, yep, they're still prospects. We'll see where it goes, and to have them right next to each other. Then Josh Sweat. He is also one of these just prototype number 2s. Never been able to take that leap into anything more than that, but has really never been anything less than that. And he's been good for the Cardinals as well. I really think if you just said, what is the archetype for a balanced number 2 type of guy that you never want to be your number 1, but you're more than happy if he's your number 2, Josh Sweat. And then we've got Montez Sweat. He goes right next to Rashawn Gary. Him and Grenard's in there too in the NFC North, but I would put Sweat above Rashawn Gary, but below Jonathan Grenard. He's calmed down a little bit, Montez Sweat, since first arriving with Chicago, but he's still a very good player, who is kind of the perfect example of this. Just like we said with Gary, where he's been asked to be the number 1, and there's been some hit or miss with him at that level. Ideally, you'd be able to put a better guy next to him and open some things up for Montez Sweat. He just doesn't quite dominate games on a consistent basis that you look for from a legitimate number 1. But he's better than the guys in that number 2 category at the same time. Okay, Kayvon Thibodeaux. I think he goes right into that ideally a number 3 category, which this year he's been able to be a number 3, and he's been a very nice player in that role. But again, nothing really more than that. He's taken a nice step as a run defender this year, which has made him a much more practical overall player. As a rusher, it's like the athleticism's there. You see flashes of power. You see occasional wins with his hands, but the development just hasn't really been there to the extent you'd want. I think for me, I would put him just behind Nolan Smith as an overall player. Then we have Dondre Tillman. Definitely needs some love here as honestly more of a specialist, kind of an early down thumper for Denver. Very much fills that mold. He can do a little bit of everything. You could argue he's just a true number 3, but because of how that pass rush is constructed, he basically never has to play on later downs for them if they don't want him to. And I think what he's at his best at is just muddying things up on earlier downs and being that kind of workhorse in the dirty work game, if you will. So gonna put him next to Dennis Gardick there in the specialist tier. Joe Tryon, for me at this point, Tryon's a number 4 or worse. Been a really disappointing lack of development. Very similar to, honestly, Yetur Gross-Matos, who came into the NFC South as a second-round pick and has since moved around the league a little bit. Then we got Tuli Pelotu. Very nice player. I think he is a number 2, but he's very much at the bottom of that category. He's a really good run defender. He's been, I would say, relatively on par with like Jonathan Cooper in terms of ability to get pressures, a lot of effort sacks, and that type of thing. I love Tuli has one dynamic trait, and that is the ability to line up over the guard and center and rush as a rush linebacker. We've seen very, minimal glimpses of it, but when they have Khalil Mack and they have Oweh to rush off the edge, they've been opened up to use Tuli in that type of way. So he's got a little bit of a it factor about him in that sense. But yeah, I think as a low end number, like true number 2, Tuli belongs there. Then Dallas Turner. I think at this point we can say ideally a number 3 / ascending guys. And that makes this category make a lot more sense as we build this thing out. That's Dallas Turner. And it's been a very quiet start to Dallas Turner's career. However, the last month or so, he's really started to show up. And I went back and watched his pressures before this show because it felt like watching the Vikings, Dallas Turner was starting to show up more. And what I saw consistently with his rushes in the last month is the pop in his hands is starting to show up. You're starting to see some of that power profile come together, and he's not just trying to out-athlete everybody. And that's a huge step for him. He's shown a lot of good stuff as a coverage dropper throughout his time here in Brian Flores' defense, so he's had a little bit of early down practicality there. You want to see him be a little bit more consistent as a run defender, but I think I would put him, him and Thibodeaux are pretty similar in my mind. Turner's still younger. I think just gut feeling, I feel like Turner at least showing some progress here is like legitimate progress as a rusher makes me want to put him over Thibodeaux. But those two guys are very close. Just freak athletes coming out, raw edge rushers coming out that need to expand their pass rushing repertoire. Then we have Josh Uche. He is absolutely a specialist. You can't really use him other than just as a, true pass rushing, designated pass rusher. We probably could recategorize these as like excellent DPR, like kind of color coded as a number 2, and then specialist / good DPR. DPR meaning designated pass rusher. That way it's filtered a little bit better. But yeah, Uche definitely in this category. He's had a very up and down career, was one of the more efficient pass rushers a couple years ago for the Patriots, and then has, went to the Chiefs, really fell off, even had a down year the next year for the Patriots, but before he went to the Chiefs. And then he's back in Philadelphia and he's getting after the QB again. Howie Roseman pulls off another kind of heist there. And I would actually put him above Von Miller in that category for what he's doing this year. Von Miller just hasn't been much. Then we got Princely Umanmielen. Interesting prospect right now. And I'm actually going to slide some of these pieces around because I think Josiah Stewart was probably a little bit high in there. When I dropped him in there, I would put Josiah Stewart probably below Mike Green. And then Princely Umanmielen behind him. And then Oladejo behind him. But yeah, Princely, it's a lot more bad tape than good tape. He has not been able to defend the run as you would expect. And he's just had a couple splash wins as a pass rusher, which isn't a big surprise given his Ole Miss tape. But he's got crazy bend and some nice quick-hitting pass rush moves. He's shown off some of those moments there for the Panthers that can get you excited. Then we have Andrew Van Ginkel. Once upon a time, I would have said he's like the best specialist, edge specialist in the league, but he's turned into such a consistent pass rusher that he's just a like legit good number 2 player. Yes, what he does best is within that scheme, dropping into coverage and being that, blitzing threat off, like he'll line up off the edge, but the fact that he might drop at any given moment and he is legitimately the best coverage edge rusher in the league, a blitzing threat in that sense via scheme, it creates such a headache for the offensive line knowing whether he's coming or not. And for a QB to actually have to worry about him getting depth and taking stuff away, it's a problem. I think I would put him very close to the top of the true number 2 category, behind Greg Rousseau, but ahead of Josh Sweat. Then we got Lucas Van Ness. I wish I could put Lucas Van Ness any higher than interesting prospect because he's had a very rocky start to his career. He was so hyper raw coming out. You could argue he probably never should have come out of Iowa, but he made the decision to do that Green Bay bets on the traits the first couple years. He's behind Gary, behind Preston Smith, not getting a ton of playing time. And then this year, in year 3, he looks like he's going to hit that potential. Like he really had a great start to the season, and then he's just been injured like this entire season. We just haven't gotten enough from him. But the flashes that we've seen from this year, I think it's more than flashes. It's like when he's been able to play, he's been a legitimately good player. It's just, can he get healthy and really get this thing going? So I'm going to put him at the top of the interesting prospect category, but he has really outstanding potential still to this day. I think he's become a little bit underrated. I think people can get pretty impatient with prospects in general, but especially when you're drafting a guy that never started in college that you knew was going to be such a project, it changes that discussion even further. Then Kyle Van Noy. Kyle Van Noy and Andrew Van Ginkel will always be kind of linked in my mind. Van Ginkel never actually played for Bill Belichick, but was drafted by Flores in Miami in the same image of Kyle Van Noy. So they're kind of forever linked in terms of skill set. I think Van Ginkel's the better overall player with Van Noy at this age, but Van Noy is a very underrated pass rusher, does all of the bonus stuff as a run defender and dropping into coverage. I think I would put Van Noy, I think behind Clowney and above Bradley Chubb I would put Chubb ahead, but then Dorrance Armstrong. So as a true number 2 between Bradley Chubb and Dorrance Armstrong. Then Jared Verse. What a start to a career he's had. I think you can make a very strong argument Jared Verse has the best bull rush in the NFL. He is a true number 1 that if he can just find a way to get off blocks a little bit quicker and finish plays and get those sacks. I don't spend a lot of time talking about sack totals, as you can tell, an hour and a half into this video. But I do think if you're talking about getting into the elite category, and that is a genuine defensive player of the year candidate, it is that last step that I think Jared Verse needs. But he is already a true number 1 edge rusher. He is phenomenal. And I think, yes, it's getting off blocks and finishing sacks, but I think if he can just add a little bit more finesse, because I think he's got some pretty good foot speed. He's very stiff. He doesn't have the bend of some of those top dudes to turn the corner necessarily. But if he could add an inside spin counter or get a little bit more consistent with his swipe counters, that's going to go a long way towards him winning even at a higher rate and getting up into that elite echelon. David Walker, one of the more devastating injuries for me this year. I was so excited to see David Walker, and the fact that the Bucs really need someone to step up with the edge group. I mean, I think they're devastated by that injury. He realistically is an interesting prospect. We haven't seen him play in the league yet, coming out of Central Arkansas. I think I will put him, though, behind Shamar Stewart, but ahead of Jonah Ellis. And honestly, I would bet on David Walker over Mike Green at this point, just because of how disappointing Mike Green is and because of the off-field concerns on Mike Green. I think as long as he can get back healthy, I'm still willing to go to bat for my dude David Walker there. Then we have the ever-interesting Travon Walker conversation. He's to me turned into a really solid number 2 edge rusher. I still think at times certain Jags fans can overrate the player. I still don't think he's a get-you-a-bucket pass rusher, a guy that you can count on to be that consistent impact in the passing game. I don't. He shows up a lot of times as a rusher. You see the traits come through. There's even moments where it's like, man, that bull rush, when it does connect, it is pretty, but it just doesn't happen consistently enough. And then there's really just not a whole lot else outside of, cleanup sacks and play action sacks where he's working through blocks. He's got the traits and the length and the motor. And that shows up too. A big reason he has really established himself as a quality number 2 is he is and has reached his potential as one of the best run defending edge rushers in the entire league. So it's really good to see, of course. And that's a big part of him getting here. So I think it just depends on how you want to discuss Travon Walker. If you think he's a number one and think the Jags should pay him $28 million a year, I would push back on that. If you think as a compliment to Josh Hines-Allen and the Jags are somehow able to keep this contract under control, which that's where I really don't know if that's going to happen, because he's had double-digit sack totals, and unfortunately that's the number these agents are able to come to the table with. And for a guy that was the number one overall pick, I just think you might have to overpay for what Travon Walker really is. We'll see what that contract ultimately looks like, because that's gonna reshape whether I'm higher or lower on Travon Walker. If you give him $18 million a year, I'll be like, yeah, that's fine. It's about what he's worth. If they cave and give him 30, I'll be like, I don't know, man. I think you could have gotten a pick for him and signed someone in free agency that can give you something comparable and made a better use of resources, instead of basically having to be double counted for overdrafting him number one overall. It's just how these negotiations work. So we'll see where that one lands. Then we got TJ Watt. Somehow the graphic ended up being JT Watt, so we're talking about JT Watt here. But I think TJ is still a number one. I think I would put him at the bottom of it, though, even below Nick Bonito. It's tough because Watts is still one of the best run defending edge players in the league, but he's not an elite guy anymore. I don't even really have I don't have a whole lot of Steelers fans trying to argue that he is. I'm curious now that we're doing the official rankings where that lands. I mean, it's just so clear. Like, he just isn't consistently impacting games. And yes, he gets a lot of chip help, but so do all the guys in the elite tier. And TJ's just not producing like those guys. 25th in total pressures. He's 51st in pass rush win rate. But there is something to be said about Watt's ability to get the strip sack in big moments. I mean, it sounds silly to boil it down to that, but I think he does bring added value. Like, you could call it a clutch factor if you want, but I think it's just a part of his game where, like, I love the Mariano Rivera comparison with him, because historically he's always won with one move, and that was Mariano and his cutter. And being the closer of games, like, there are games where TJ Watt will disappear for 3 quarters, and then when you need him, he'll end the game for you. So I still think he's a true number one, and I hope that's enough respect for TJ with where he's at this stage in his career. I don't know that I would have given him the contract extension that the Steelers did. I mean, I think that could prove problematic that they did it when they did, because he still was under control, and I don't think he plays like a $40 million elite pass rusher, certainly at this stage in his career. So that's kind of a different conversation, but it doesn't make him anything short of still a great player. Then we got Keion White, who was recently traded to the Niners. He has really fallen off of the face of the planet. Feels like he's hardly playing for the Niners too. But if you look, he actually is. He's playing about 35 snaps a game for them. You just don't really notice Keion White. We'll see where it goes for them. I do like the system fit in Robert Saleh's defense there. It just obviously hasn't really come to fruition yet. I think you almost drop him into that interesting prospect category, kind of with that cluster of Lucas Van Ness, Myles Murphy, Mykel Williams, Shamar Stewart. Kind of makes sense to me just in terms of how you perceive Keion White. I think because he's kind of heading in the wrong direction. He's already turning 27 this year, was just traded for nothing. You put him below those 4 names, but I think that's where I'm going to land on Keion White. Sam Williams, at a point in time, he was a really fascinating, explosive player. He's had a bit of a falling out, injured in 2024, and this year he's really struggling to make any sort of consistent impact. I think at this point, guys like Yetur Gross-Matos and the Ojulari guys, Ebiketie, these second round picks that maybe showed some flashes but never really surfaced. That's probably where Sam Williams belongs, as a number 4 or worse. So I'm going to put him, I think, above Joe Tryon, another one of those names, late first rounder for Tryon. Tyree Wilson, I think Wilson's a 3 until proven otherwise. He does some good early down stuff. You get the occasional pass rush win from him. Obviously hasn't reached his potential as a top 10 draft pick, but he's not a useless player either. He's a pretty easy one to slot, honestly, because I don't know that his game is going to change a whole lot unless he ends up in a different system where they want him to like rush wide 9 and like really get into that speed to power rush and see if they can unlock that. Right now, they kind of just stick him in between the tackle and the guard and try to muddy things up, and he's a nice kind of rotational third. Then we have DJ Wonnum, also like kind of the definition of a true number 3. Not a bad player. He's had a down year this year, but historically he's been a good run defender and someone that can rack up some pressures if you give him enough pass rush snaps. But with having a bit of a down year, I think I would drop him down to like with Anthony Nelson there towards the bottom of the group. Then we got Alex Wright. I would just put him right next to Elijah McGuire. Wright's having an awesome season, though, and we'll see if we need to reevaluate this if he keeps producing. But very good early down run defender that with some twitch and versatility as a rusher and some power, there is upside there for him to keep growing and climbing out of this group. But I think for now, that's the right placement for him. Then we got Byron Young. He is really having a good year, man. He's becoming expensive in a hurry for the Rams. I actually think he's a number 2 with what he's doing this year. And if you asked me that last year, I would have said he's a number 3. Like I thought he was all athleticism and cleanup sacks before this year. But you watch the tape on Byron Young this year, and it's just different. He has clearly seen what Jared Verse did coming in as a rookie last year and said, I can do a little bit of that. And we're actually seeing Byron Young win with a bull rush now. And some of the other finesse moves have developed nicely for him too. So he has really turned into a nice player. Jags fans won't like it, but I mean, I think he's probably been better than Trayvon Walker. And then you're getting into like Jadeveon Clowney, Jermaine Johnson. I think Clowney's been really good. So I'll put Byron Young there between Walker and Clowney, but I have certainly been impressed by his development. And such a fun story, right? Still new to football, really coming into his own as a professional. So it's great to see that surface at the right time for him. And then you got Chase Young, who's also having a really nice year. I think Chase Young is a really quality number 2 guy. If he keeps up at this rate, he might even be kind of that Rashawn Gary, Montez Sweat category of like, even if he's your number 1, you're okay with it. And then you ideally would upgrade at that spot in the future. I'm not quite there yet with Chase Young, but because he just came back off injury and he's been really efficient since he came back. But I think I'm going to put him near the top of the true number 2 category. And that is it. That took a while, but this is one of my favorite position groups to talk about. So 118 players, went a little bit longer. I hope you guys don't mind. Really curious what you guys think about the list. It was fun to kind of sort through some of these tiers and rename some of these tiers as we went as well. Curious if you guys think I missed anybody. That usually happens with these videos with 118 players. Sometimes someone sneaks onto the IR and I don't see them when I'm going through team by team. So if I forgot anybody, let me know and I'll be sure to comment back where I would slot them. And let me know what you think of the list. Did I get this right? Am I way off? Curious what you guys think. Very fun video. Please do hit that like button on the way out. And of course, if you enjoyed and you're not already, please do subscribe. We're going to continue making Tier Maker videos throughout the course of the season and so much more. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys hopefully in a few hours for the live stream tonight. But until then, cheers.